Well, welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. In less than 18 hours, Canada will be hit with Donald Trump's massive 25% tariff. What's happening, what's possible, and what's no longer possible. When we come back, the latest. We need political change. But we also need the resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station right now if you can, because it helps us beat the YouTube suppression, which affects me every day. So many stations out there with people who don't know what they're talking about. I'm not going to say it. No, I'm not going to say it. It's obvious. But please subscribe if you haven't. Resubscribe if you need to. Really appreciate it. It helps a small station like this out so much. So we can continue to get, I think, a unique perspective out. Now, what did we learn last night? Well, somebody's been getting through to Donald Trump. I wonder who that's been. Yes, Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. If you watched my broadcast yesterday afternoon, we talked about her very good idea of appointing a border czar for Canada. And we'll revisit what she said yesterday and why it's significant, how it's affecting other political leaders and the whole dynamic. But of course, let's listen to a little more what Donald Trump said last night. Now, I looked at the last minute. He said he was going to think about the oil all night long. Now, I don't know if he's thinking about oil at all. Donald Trump doesn't seem to realize that, yes, the United States does need Canadian oil. And why is that? Yeah, they make all kinds of oil. Yeah, and then they got all kinds of trees. Yes, we know that. But the refineries in the United States can only refine the sulfurous oil that Canada produces, not the sweet crude the U.S. produces. So if Donald Trump doesn't want Canadian oil, he's not got enough of the right kind of U.S. oil to refine. So, yeah, it's going to be a problem. And if he puts tariffs on Canadian oil, it's going to mean the price of gasoline in the States is going to go up 75 cents a gallon overnight, minimum. So, yeah, he's thinking hard about the tariffs. And, you know, I love Donald Trump. He's dead wrong about this. He's dead wrong about thinking he can get by without Canadian oil. Danielle Smith knows that. Donald Trump
be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
Will oil be part of that, though? Because we get oil from Canada.
Oil is going to have nothing to do with it as far as I'm concerned. Oil has nothing to do with it.
Tariffs on Canada.
Oil has nothing to do with it. He's the one who just said that.
Mexico, 25%. That's coming on Saturday?
That's coming on the first Saturday.
But no oil tariff, no oil tariffs.
No, I don't. Well, I didn't say that. You said that. No.
Well, I don't want to misinterpret.
No, actually,
we may or may not. We're going to make that determination probably tonight on oil. Yeah, because they send us oil. We'll see. It depends on what the price is. If the oil is properly priced, if they treat us properly, which they don't. Look, Mexico and Canada have never been good to us on trade. They've treated us very unfairly on trade. And we will be able to make that up very quickly because we don't need the products that they have. We have all the oil you need. We have all the trees you need, meaning the lumber. We have more than almost anybody in those two categories. In oil, we have more than anybody, and we don't need anybody's trees. We have to free up some of the some of the tree areas that we have. We have great lumber in this country. We have to free them up environmentally, which I can do very quickly. But we don't need what they have. And for us to be subsidizing Canada to the tune of $175 billion a year and subsidizing Mexico to the tune of $250 billion, $300 billion a year. And Mexico is a method of China sending in its product. And with China, I'm also thinking about something because they're sending fentanyl into our country. And because of that, they're causing us hundreds of thousands of deaths. So China is going to end up paying a tariff also for that. And we're in the process of doing that.
That's an interesting point about the fentanyl, because we continue to hear about how very little fentanyl is getting across the Canadian border. Actually, my friend and colleague, Sam Cooper of the Bureau, and I'm going to be going into this more tomorrow, discusses how there is a relationship between the border security crisis and Chinese influence. He outlines how the ports in Vancouver are controlled by China, and they are getting fentanyl into Canada through the ports of entry on the West Coast. This, of course, is causing problems at the border. So there's a relationship between the so-called no problem with China influence or interference in Canadian politics and the border security crisis. All of these things are interrelated. We'll be getting into that more tomorrow. And Sam Cooper has done some really good work. I just wanted to mention that as an aside before I forget, because we need to get into the real issue here, which is what's going on at the border now. Is there any hope of staving off this tariff? We're 18 hours away, my friends. Now, the only person who's done any substantive work has been Premier Danielle Smith. Now, I think, let's listen to her again. Suggest that we get a border czar. And she also invited Fox News up to see what Alberta is doing at their border with Montana. The Coots border crossing. We all know that became a flashpoint during the Freedom Convoy because that border crossing was blockaded for quite some time. It had nothing to do, I will remind you, with Trudeau invoking the Emergencies Act, because that border blockade dispute was resolved before Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. However, it's in the news again because Premier Smith did invite Fox News up, and I'll be showing you that report in a minute. But let's listen to Danielle Smith. Common sense advice here.
November 25th, President Trump publicly warned that he would impose tariffs on Canada unless we take action on critical border issues such as cracking down on fentanyl, other illegal drugs, and illegal immigration. And I've been clear from the beginning that we must take President Trump's statements on border security seriously and to take action immediately, rather than focusing on inflaming the issue with rhetoric around retaliation. My fellow premiers have been asking for serious action on these issues as well. Today, U.S. President Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary nominee, Howard Lutnick, stated during his confirmation hearing that, quote, "If we are your biggest trading partner, show us the respect, shut your border. This is a separate tariff to create action from Mexico and action from Canada. As far as I know, they are acting swiftly, and if they execute it, there will be no tariff. And if they don't, then there will be." Let me say it again. The one thing that we can do this week, in just the next couple of days, to have the best chance to avoid tariffs is to show clear and unequivocal action to secure the border. This should start with the appointment of a Canadian border czar to work with the new American border czar to jointly crack down hard on fentanyl and illegal migrants. Is this likely to end the threat of tariffs entirely? I don't think so. I think there'll be other things that we will need to work on, and we will do so. But I am convinced, after speaking with dozens of elected U.S. representatives, administration officials, and the president himself, that this is the most important first step.
Now, has there been any response from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about this? No. He has not directly addressed Danielle Smith's suggestion. He said he hasn't dismissed it, but nor has he even affirmed its existence. And he won't, because as I keep saying, Justin Trudeau wants a border crisis to prevail. He wants a trade war with the United States to prevail because it's in his interest to do so. It's in the interest of the Liberal Party of Canada to fight the United States, to fight Donald Trump. I keep saying that every day. It's that simple. It is raw politics. Danielle Smith is not saying that, but she understands that too. And she's making it easy for Justin Trudeau. All you got to do is say, oh, good idea, Premier Smith. Why don't we do that? Because as I said yesterday, by imposing this tariff on Canada, Donald Trump is helping Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party to stay in power. There's no question about that. I don't know if he realizes that. I don't know if he cares, but somebody's got to make that statement publicly. He's helping Justin Trudeau by creating this crisis in Canada where Trudeau and the Liberals can exploit it as it being Canada versus Trump. Canada meaning the Liberal Party of Canada versus Donald Trump. That's how they're framing this fight. That's how they're framing the next election. Can't overemphasize.
Today, I reiterated this to the premiers, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Wilkinson, and Prime Minister Trudeau, and I hope it is acted on by the end of this week before February 1st. That is why we also sent a Fox News crew to the Coutts border today to showcase the work Alberta has been doing to secure our border, including the establishment of a new interdiction patrol team within the Alberta Sheriffs to combat drug smuggling, gun trafficking, and other illegal activities along Alberta's 298-kilometer international boundary with the United States. This interdiction team will be supported by 51 uniformed officers equipped with carbine rifles, weapons for tactical operations, 10 support staff, including dispatchers and analysts, 4 drug patrol dogs, 10 cold weather surveillance drones capable of operating in high winds with dedicated pilots, 4 narcotics analyzers to test for illicit drugs. Additionally, Alberta's government will create a 2-kilometer deep critical border zone deemed critical infrastructure, allowing sheriffs to arrest individuals attempting to cross the border illegally or traffic drugs or weapons without the need for a warrant. I want to thank the federal government for accepting Alberta's request to send a Black Hawk helicopter to the border today, further demonstrating the actions we are taking collectively to secure the border. We want to ensure that the American people, along with their president and elected representatives, know that action is being taken on this issue. And we are hopeful that these Fox News appearances display our province's and our nation's commitment.
Okay, Danielle Smith is working overtime to secure her part of the border. What is Justin Trudeau doing? As I said, he hasn't spent a dime yet because all of his $1.3 billion border security plan is wrapped up in a fall economic update that hasn't even been voted on, and it's spread out over 6 years. So his border security plan is a farce. Donald Trump knows that. Danielle Smith is trying to produce something else desperately at the 11th hour, because we are going to have a tariff tomorrow, barring a miracle today. And it's been Justin Trudeau's dilly-dally, his obdurance in the face of common sense, his refusal to simply acquiesce to a very reasonable demand that Canada get its border in line with reality. He won't do that. Now, why isn't Pierre Poilievre jumping at the opportunity to say, along with Danielle Smith, great idea, let's get a border czar. I like that idea. I'm on side. I'm with you, Danielle. These two are very old friends. They've known each other for decades. They're very much political allies. You have to remember, Pierre comes from Alberta. He's from Calgary. A lot of people think he's from Quebec because of his last name, and Poilievre and Pierre. No, he's from Calgary. He knows Danielle Smith. He agrees with what Danielle Smith's doing. He agrees the Constitution gives natural resources rights to the provinces. He knows that. And I'm sure he agrees that we should have a border czar. But what is he doing? Well, one day he's talking about how he's very concerned about hate crimes in Canada. And he continues to repeat the same talking points he's been repeating for the same year. And yes, and those talking points were correct. The carbon tax is evil. We need to axe the tax. Well, he's partially won that battle because the Liberals are backtracking so quickly on that. It's unimaginable. But it's time to move on, at least for a while, at least until we get this border disaster solved, to start talking about that and to stop talking for a few weeks anyway, maybe a few days, about carbon tax Carney and carbon tax Christia, and to focus on solving this border crisis. But I don't know, he's not doing that.
Both carbon tax Chrystia Freeland and carbon tax Carney have been running our economy into the ground for the last 5 years. They have been Justin Trudeau's economic lieutenants. Carbon tax Carney is the official economic advisor to Justin Trudeau. Chrystia Freeland is his, until recently, finance minister. What have they done? Well, we have 2 million people lined up at food banks. The cost of food has risen 37% faster in Canada than in the United States over the last 4 years. Cost of housing has doubled. It's risen faster than in any other G7 country. Vancouver house prices are now the most expensive in North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, all the big American cities that have more people, more money, and less land. Their folks get more affordable homes than do Vancouverites. And look at our economic growth. It's the worst in the G7 since Carney and Freeland took over Justin Trudeau's economic policy. Our per capita GDP, that's income per person, is lower than it was in 2019, the year before COVID, even while the American incomes have gone up by 8%. So $500 billion of net investment has left Canada to go to the United States, where it is building businesses, pipelines, factories, mines that pay American wages with our investment dollars. Why is the money leaving? Because you can't get anything built in Canada, and even if you do, you're taxed into the ground for doing it. So we're losing, all because carbon tax Carney and carbon tax Christia have been driving the economic policy off the cliff. And now, carbon tax Carney wants to go even further. He proposes to raise the carbon tax even more. He has the same policies as Justin Trudeau. That's why I say they're both just like Justin. And we'll see, they'll lie. The lying Liberals will try to tell you that they are going to do everything differently than they have done for the last 9 years. They're going to pretend that they've changed their mind about all of the policies that they imposed on our people for 9 long years. But they'll just tell the lie long enough to get through the election, and then they'll go back to doing what they've been doing before.
Okay, it's all very true. Yeah, time to axe the tax. Yes, and the Liberals, we can't trust them to do that. We know they're not sincere about the carbon tax being a bad thing. They don't care. They're just trying to grasp on to power. Very true. But I'm sorry, keep repeating carbon tax Carney 15 times during his speech. It doesn't really add up to you doing anything about the border right now. Now, Pierre's in campaign mode right now. He's ready for the next election. He wants that next election to happen, and so do we all. We need a new election. He's in campaign mode, and he's repeating the same talking points that were so effective over the last 2 or 3 years. Axe the tax. Carbon tax Carney. Chrystia Freeland's responsible for it. They're all just like Justin. Yes, these were effective talking points. They're not right now, because that's not what people are concerned about. And I know what's going on here because I worked there. This is the communications people. And more specifically, these are the people who are running Pierre Poilievre's campaign. They're telling him, keep focusing on the carbon tax. Keep in step with that. Don't shift. Don't pivot. Just let the other people worry about the border. Keep talking about the same things because that's what got you 25% ahead of Justin Trudeau in the Liberals. And they're saying, don't adapt. Don't evolve. Don't transition. That's crazy advice. And it's the same crazy advice that told Stephen Harper in his last election in 2015, just say that Justin Trudeau's just not ready. You remember that ad? One of the worst political ads in the history of politics. Continue to say Justin's just not ready. Ready? Well, when is he going to be ready then? The next election? After Stephen Harper, he'll be ready? That was a horrible ad. Terrible ad. And people, of course, it backfired. They said, well, let's see if he's ready. Of course he wasn't ready. Justin Trudeau will never be ready. He was never ready to be prime minister. He was a walking disaster waiting to happen. But that's the advice Stephen Harper took. And it was disastrous. He entered that campaign 10 or 12 points ahead of Mulcair, who was running the NDP at the time, and 15 ahead of Trudeau in his first election as Liberal leader. He lost it because he listened to bad campaign advice. Poilievre needs to do something different. He needs to stand up today and say, I'm with Danielle Smith on this on this, I almost said it, on this border czar. I'm with her on the border czar because we need to do something radically different. Let's have a look at Danielle Smith. She invited Fox News up to Coots for this report here.
Hi, good morning there, Maria. You know, Canada is America's biggest trading partner. Goods and services flowing across this northern border here tally more than $900 billion in a single year, according to the latest government data. So that intention from President Trump to impose a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada, garnering a lot of attention here in Canada and a lot of immediate action from the federal government as well as from the province of Alberta, where we are. The province's premier, which is similar to a state's governor, called for yesterday the appointment of a national border czar, which would serve as the counterpart to our Tom Homan. Premier Danielle Smith talked with us earlier this week about Alberta's efforts to meet Trump's concerns about securing the border by investing roughly $20 million of provincial funds to secure Alberta's portion of the border that it shares with Montana. Listen here.
We've already taken action in Alberta to make sure that we're shoring up as much as we can to have the dogs at the border and the commercial vehicle inspection and teams of sheriffs and drones. Though that's what I think the president wants to see, is that we're taking it seriously, that we're going to stop the flow of drugs and guns and people across the borders.
So Alberta's new funding is allowing the province to deploy 50 of its own sheriff's deputies across Alberta's portion of the border, a 200-mile stretch here. It's also allowing drug-sniffing dogs, thermal imaging technology, and drones. And we talked with Alberta's Minister of Public Safety yesterday, and he tells us they are stopping the flow of drugs and fentanyl across the border.
I would say President Trump, I can tell you right now, having worked with these wonderful men and women that are in the RCMP and Canada Border Services, I can tell you this border is secure.
Sorry, this border is secure. You can't get more emphatic than that. That is good work. That's bringing your U.S. audience to your home base and saying, have a look, check us out. This is how we're doing. And I think that is why Danielle Smith is doing a superior job, and she understands what the issue is here. She understands what the issue is. She's essentially the acting prime minister. Let's have a look at this here. Dominic LeBlanc text video on Canadian border efforts to potential Trump tariff point man. Now, Dominic LeBlanc, this isn't even his responsibility anymore. He's not public safety minister. They put the very haphazard David McGuinty in charge of that. However, folks, Dominic LeBlanc is probably the only person on the front bench in the Liberal government with any real intelligence. And I hate to give credit to anybody in that front bench, but at least he seems to understand that you got to say something to Donald Trump and his administration. And he's actually doing that. And he's actually trying to help Danielle Smith advance the cause. Because I think he sees that, this just might work. This just might work. And I think this is incredibly important right now to what's going on. Thank God somebody gets this. Now, as I said yesterday, the only hope we have is that Parliament gets back in session as quickly as possible and we move into an election. Let's hear what old Jagmeet Singh, talking out of both sides of his mouth. Now, of course, he's right on side with a spring election. And I'll tell you why in a minute.
But in this time, we also see other leaders that are taking shots at Canada. I got a message for Pierre Poilievre, who says that Canada is weak. Canada is not weak because Canadians are strong. We're going to stand up and fight back. And while the Liberals seem more focused on themselves, I have a specific message to the Liberals. If you're serious about supports for workers, I'm demanding that the Liberal government call back Parliament. Let's put before Parliament a package to protect workers, support workers that are impacted by these tariffs, and to support communities. The workers behind me are for Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie is a community in a city that could be hard hit by these tariffs. So let's stand up for this, Sue. Let's stand up for all communities across Canada that are going to be hard hit by the tariffs. And let's put in place supports before the worst happens. So
I hate this firing squad layout here. We see this from all political leaders today, but doesn't it drive you crazy? It looks like these people are waiting to be shot. They're all lined up like it's a firing squad. And it just drives me absolutely it drives me crazy. But anyway, that is what Jagmeet Singh is saying now. He wants an election.
I'm calling on the Liberal government to recall Parliament, bring Parliament back. Let's pass legislation that supports workers because we're going to have an election in the spring. Nothing changes around that. We are going to be voting down the government in March. But there's still 2 months. If the Liberals think that they can wait 2 months before they bring in legislation, they are wrong. That would allow workers to suffer for 2 months. That is not the right way to do things. So I'm calling on the Liberals, recall Parliament, put forward protections for workers before Parliament. Let's get the opposition leaders together. Obviously, we need to support that kind of package, and then let's have an election in the spring. But my message is very clear. We're going to fight back. We're going to have these workers' backs. And to do that, we need to have legislation in place that support these workers directly with the supports.
Hey, that's about the 15th time Jagmeet Singh in the last couple of days has pledged himself for a non-confidence motion against Justin Trudeau, has pledged himself for an early election, has said he is with Pierre Poilievre to have early elections. Now, pretty hard to get out of that. But he's right about one thing. Yes, bring Parliament back. Now, why is he suddenly changing his tune? Is he suddenly realized that he should be fighting for the good of all Canadians? No, of course not. He realizes his support is hemorrhaging right now to the Liberals, and he had better have an election sooner rather than later because he could be evaporating as a party. Because it's supported the Liberals for so long, people can't tell the difference anymore between the NDP and the Liberals. So Jagmeet Singh needs an election now. He's got his pension. The pension's good in March. He's good for that. So now he can do what he thinks is going to be perceived by some people as Jagmeet Singh working for the good of the country. And of course, it's not. But that is where we are with this. So despite the fact that there are mixed motives going on here. This could still work out with a conservative victory in an early election if we can bring down this Trudeau government. And in the next 18 hours, if we can avoid a tariff. In fact, we're running out of time. We have 14 hours minus 30. Actually, 13 hours minus 30 now until that tariff comes in. I want to turn briefly here to the Hogg inquiry. And this is an interesting analysis from former president of the Liberal Party, Stephen LeDrew.
The Hogg inquiry into foreign interference in our elections recently reported Dean Baxendale, who you know, president of Optimum Publishing, was in Ottawa for that because he's always interested in foreign interference. And you were there. You've got the report right here. Let's just talk about that report saying, well, there's no question some MPs were elected that may not have been elected without foreign interference, but would have changed the outcome of the election.
That is the premise, ultimately, of Justice Hogg's diatribe with respect to giving her a press conference after the delivery of the report. I spent 2.5 hours combing through the report, looking at the recommendations, looking at various aspects that were of interest to me specifically in terms of diaspora politics, but ultimately about Han Dong and others within the Liberal apparatus. She definitely came out hard on him to say, hey, the PRC absolutely influenced his nomination and put him in place.
The Communist Party of China.
The Communist Party of China, the PRC.
So, I mean, we have a situation where MPs are sitting there, maybe put in by the Communist Party of China, but simply because it didn't make a difference as to who was Prime Minister, no big deal.
And so, really, is it a big deal? At the end, if we have a couple of MPs, that end up in Parliament because the foreign government puts them in place, or wants to influence them,
and maybe ministers. Well, they're not traitors, but they behave poorly with some foreign governments.
Well, really, poorly? Come on. We don't have
this stuff.
We do not have tough enough laws with respect to espionage and what foreign influence is today. We're looking at a 1950s playbook in a 2030 realm where the CCP and other malign states are way ahead of us in terms of doing foreign influence, espionage operations, and ultimately undermining democracy writ large in this country and in every other democracy.
Now, I'm going to delve into this a little bit more, including what I have from Sam Cooper, my friend and colleague, who is doing a wonderful work on Substack. It's called The Bureau. Have a look at the stuff he's doing. But here's a CSIS agent saying, what is going on with this Hogg inquiry? And I'm going to show you the entire clip the next episode we do either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, depending upon how my day goes here and what happens with tariffs, because we've got our finger on this. I've got a number of things I have to write up, but I want to keep in contact with you, my audience, on this issue, because this is of vital importance to all of us as Canadians. And we need to solve this issue, and we need to ensure
for the law enforcement to be capable to act. And when she says that she found no evidence that elected officials purposely or intentionally decided to work with foreign state, well, I would say return to your books, because we have plenty of evidence at CSIS and DRC.
Yeah, that's a former CSIS operative saying, crap, this is nonsense, that there's no problem here. There's a problem here, a huge problem. So before I go, I want to remind you, tell your Conservative MP, if you have one, to rally round Danielle Smith's proposal for a border czar. Tell them to tell Pierre Poilievre that he must stand up today and say he's in favor of that proposal. It's a good idea. Stop talking about the carbon tax for a day. Stop talking about carbon tax carney for a day or two. Focus on the border and focus on Canada and focus on what we need to do to avoid, to stave off this Trump tariff, that's coming as sure as 10 dimes make a dollar within the next 14 hours. We need to be fighting that. So Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland or whomever the Liberal Party puts up there in the next election cannot exploit that tariff for their own political purposes and run against Donald Trump and not against Pierre Poilievre. That's what we need to do right now. Thanks for watching today. I will be back again either this afternoon or tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. So let's continue to resolve to resist. Thanks for watching today.